teach this course here at the Vietnamese German University. Good morning. We're here to spend the next 2 weeks together thinking about advanced topics in monetary economics. The first lecture today is going to be divided into 2 parts. We're first going to talk a little bit about some of the administrative matters. How is this course set up? What type of material is available online? What are the topics that we are going to cover? And so forth and so forth. And then the second part of today's lecture is supposed to start digging into the material that I prepared. So that's the big plan. Welcome again. Maybe a little bit of a background for myself. I'm a professor of macroeconomics at Goethe University in Frankfurt am Main in Germany. Earlier in my career, I used to be a central banker. I held positions as an economist as well as a manager at various central banks, including the Federal Reserve in Washington, D.C., and the European Central Bank in Frankfurt, among others. And my research and teaching interests are located in the realm of monetary macroeconomics, if you like. That's what fascinates me, and that's what keeps me up at night, doing research on those type of topics. All right. Now, let me start with this very first slide deck, and maybe it's a good idea to first start where can you find this very first slide deck. There is a Moodle website. Right? First important question, does everybody have access for this Moodle website? We all have access to that. Perfect. So the material is all available on that website, and I did post all these slides and the course material. So if you like, this is like a key page to get all the material. In this first lecture, we're going to talk now about this Lego 1 intro that introduces us to the course. And I'm also going to talk about the schedule and the module description. Okay? So that's the plan for the very first hour. Now, I do want to learn your first names or your names. Could you please put up a little of a name tag in front of you if you have a piece of paper? There's some paper here. Not too much. Everybody writes your name. That would be great for me to start memorizing your names. And it's going to be much more fun if we are able to talk with each other.
Sau đi ha, cái này trước không chết
If somebody needs a pen, write on.
Cho nó tờ đôi dung đi giữ luôn cái phần còn lại đi. Được. Chị nghĩ là được.
Ở trên kia có.
Ok rồi, ok. Còn em sẽ
Start and we go this way. Your first name is Kwan. Yeah, that's correct. The way you pronounce it, Kwan. Yeah, excellent. You are Lin. Okay, excellent. You are Alexa, and you are Ivy. Kwan, Lin, Guide Me, and Alexa. Perfect. Let's continue here. You are Min. Great. Min. And An. Excellent. And then we gotta have the two. Is that the right way to pronounce it? Excellent. And Hui? Yes. Okay, excellent. And then last but not least, of course, we have one.
Yeah.
One? Okay, one. Okay, I'll try hard. Okay, great. All right. So we're going to be here for the next 2 weeks, right? For 2 consecutive weeks in terms of this course. Let's first talk about what this course is going to be all about, just to understand what this course offers. And then once we have put that all to the side, we'll talk about when we're going to meet and what are going to be the lecture times and blah, 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 blah. Okay? So let's start with this. So we are here to talk about advanced topics in monetary economics. So that's the big topic. And what I intend to do is to introduce you to where is the research frontier in the field of monetary economics. So when you open a top journal, do you know what a top journal is in economics? In macroeconomics? Like when people talk about top journals, what do people typically talk about? They talk about 5 journals. What are the top 5 journals? Have you heard about those? When, so research, Econometrica, exactly, right? There's Econometrica, is one very famous journal. Then there is the American Economic Review. Then there is the Quarterly Journal of Economics. There's the Journal of Political Economy. And there's the Review of Economic Studies. So those are in economics or in macroeconomics the top 5 journals. And many people try to publish their research in those journals because those journals are very famous, and when you are publishing it, it's like you publish an article in the New York Times or in the Wall Street Journal. Many people are reading it, and so that's how your research is disseminated in the profession. Okay? So it's a little bit like if you make it into this top 5, you made a significant step in a career. And also in displaying that the research you're doing is very relevant because central banks, monetary policy making institutions are following these journals. Okay? So long story short, these journals are very famous, but they only publish very new papers, very new ideas, very new results, really frontier elements. If you try to publish something that's like old news, those journals won't publish it. So the idea is that what we're going to do in this course is I'm trying to get you to what is the current frontier research all about. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover papers, so research papers in the field of monetary economics, published in these leading journals. And the approach that we're going to take here in this class is that we're trying to learn how top tier or cutting edge research is first, how it's developed. What's the production function of cutting edge research? I mean, how do you write a research paper that's top notch? How do you present it? So it's one thing to write, sit down at night or during the day and write a great paper, but then there is another way of how do you present your research results. There's an art in that, doing that. In the sense that there is a certain routine, there's a certain way of, presenting your findings to the community. And then, discussing some of the, advantages, but also shortcomings, and then the publication stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to be in part a consumer. We're going to try to understand and learn what is advanced topics in monetary economics, what is cutting edge research in this field. But we're not going to just sit there and read and try to understand. No, the idea of this course is also to understand in depth, what are the methods used. So What are the methodologies? Is this empirical? Is this model theoretical? And if so, in one way or the other, how is this being done methodologically? We'll talk about how the analysis is carried out. How do people in this field analyze? And then we're going to discuss model results, but importantly also model implications in terms of policy. In the end, monetary economics or macroeconomics in more general, is a discipline that talks about, on the one hand, about understanding features in the data to build models. But that's not where the whole idea stops in terms of building a model and being happy about a model. No, then we're going to use the model to discuss policy implications. And so we're going to think about how can the central bank improve the lives of the citizens of a country? How can a treasury or fiscal authority conduct better policies? And that way, we're trying to, we're using the model to do that analysis. So that's the typical thing in macroeconomics, right? In macroeconomics, we first look at data, we look at features, and then we build a model. Now, does somebody have an idea why? And then we use the model to do policy implications. Does somebody have an idea why in macroeconomics we often do empirical analysis and then build a model? Why are macroeconomists sometimes obsessed with models? Do we have an idea why that is?
Because we want our model to describe whatever is the empirical result showing.
Exactly, right? We want the model to explain, the empirical results that we have uncovered in the first place. That's great. But why do we want to have the model to explain that? Why don't we just stop with the empirical analysis? Why don't we just say, look, these are the facts? Why do people develop a model in the first place?
Because they want to pin down what is the causal relation or whatever.
Exactly, Lynn, right? We want to pin down what is the causal relationship, that creates the data. It's one thing to, this is how the data looks like. GDP is going up or inflation is flatlined. But then we want a causal relationship on why does inflation do what it does? Why is growth going up? Now with the war in Iran that just happened, many people say oil prices go up. We want to understand why oil prices go up and then by how much oil prices go up. And for that you typically need a model. Now there is a second dimension, for why writing down a model, which is that we want to have this causal relationships in other disciplines. Like in physics or in medicine, do you know how people in physics and medicine develop causal relationships? Experiments, one, right? Exactly. They do experiments. Like if you develop a new drug, right? If you develop a new drug to cure a disease. What the medicine science does is it develops a new drug candidate and then it gives it to a part of the population, say half this class really gets the drug and the other half gets a placebo. And then the experiment is to test how effective is the drug in curing the disease, checking how many of you, get healthy and how many of you, continue to be sick, say, right? And that's the experiment. So we can, in other disciplines, measure exactly what is the causal relationship as linked to it. In economics, unfortunately, in macroeconomics, we don't have that luxury. We cannot do controlled experiments on the macroeconomy. We cannot take Vietnam as a country or Germany as a country and divide it into two parts. And then have a drug given to the northern part and a drug not given to the southern part and do that controlled experiment. That doesn't work, of course, for obvious reasons. Ethical reasons, practical reasons, it's just impossible. And that's why macroeconomists develop models. The models are our laboratory. We do experiments in our models. That's the whole idea, to develop these causal relationships. Perfect. So, and then we use the models. That was a long introduction to why we're going to study policy implications. We then going to use our models to understand, okay, if we change a policy in our models, how does the economy adjust? Because we cannot do that in economics or in macroeconomics, on the whole country. So that's the whole idea. All right. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to have we have lectures, but then there's also going to be some hands-on computer sessions, and we'll talk more about how they are going to look like, what we're going to do there, and so forth. Okay. So it's going to be a blend here today, and not today, just for the next 10 days. It's going to be a blend of theory, but also hands-on computer sessions. Good morning, and welcome to the course. I asked every student to put up a little name tag. Could you just write your first name, perhaps? That would be great. I'm trying to memorize your names. Excellent. So now, if you open the top 5 journals and think about monetary economics, what are the top papers published there, you will find that there's a lot of fields, even in the field, subfield, in the field of monetary economics. So we have to, by the nature of this course, we cannot cover everything. We have to narrow down a little bit. And so what we're going to do is we're going to think about applications and extensions at the research frontier of the so-called standard New Keynesian monetary model, the New Keynesian model. And we're going to look at what does the research frontier do on this. It's the, if you like, this model framework is the leading framework in the field of monetary economics. You go to a random central bank of your choice, you will find that model being used because first, it's able to address data. Second, it is very useful in conducting policy experiments in that model. Now let me ask you first question. Have you heard about the New Keynesian model? Who has heard about the New Keynesian model? All of you guys? Alexa? You have not heard? Ivy, you did raise one? Okay. Lee? Alexa, you haven't heard about the model yet? Okay, we have to take that into consideration when we're going to go through the material, the class material. I'm going to ask you a few questions on this slide deck a little later about your background, so I'll come back to where you did study the New Keynesian model, with whom, and so forth. All right. Good. So what are going to be the topics of this course? And I've selected 2 very hot topics in the literature. So the first hot topic of cutting-edge research is going to be an extension of the New Keynesian model to think about the macroeconomic effects of climate change. We all live in a world where we understand that there is change in climate, whether this is man or human-made or not. We're going to discuss that, but that's not so important for our purposes. The idea is to better understand if climate changes for whatever reason, what are the effects on the macroeconomy of that? And then more deeply, does this have any impact on, say, how the central bank operates in the country? Does this affect income and inflation, and if so, how? And does this make monetary policy more or less complicated? So that's what we're trying to understand here. And we have a tremendous amount of contributions on this topic, and it has really increased in volume, but also, of course, in terms of quality. So we want to try to understand what is this two-way interaction between climate change and the macroeconomy. So does climate change affect the macroeconomy in the sense of, if there's more often, tropical storms hitting, or droughts hitting, or very low temperatures and so forth hitting the economy, destroying productive capacity, how does that affect the macroeconomy? And when it is more, when you have more recurrent natural disasters, it's more expensive for firms to develop a capital stock, to form production structures. Now, when something gets more expensive, we all know firms have this tendency, if they have higher costs, to pass this on to consumers. So in other words, if there's destruction from natural disasters, from climate change, higher temperatures, firms passing on these higher costs because of those natural disasters to their customers, we're going to get more inflation. How much? And is this a big problem? Is this a small problem? Does this make the life of the central bank more complicated? We're also going to think about, we have many countries on our globe that impose environmental policies. They impose carbon taxes. Is there a carbon tax in Vietnam? Do you guys know whether there's a carbon tax? So in Germany we have a carbon tax.
Yep.
If you buy a liter of gasoline for your car, or you book a travel, by an airplane travel, you're paying for the emissions that you are doing a proportional tax. And we have that in many countries around the globe. Not in all, of course, but in many countries. So that's what's called an environmental policy. We're going to try to understand how does that affect the economy. And then is that going to, what's the feedback of this to to climate change? You can also ask about, if firms were emit, carbon dioxide, say, and if you tax them, that's going to reduce their emissions. How is that feeding back onto climate? So that's what I mean by two-way. Climate change does affect the macroeconomy. The macroeconomy can also affect climate change. And that's the two-way interaction we want to study. And emissions and environmental policies are going to be important. Well, then we're also going to think about monetary policy. We're going to think about, does this change the way the central bank should maybe operate? Now, we could study hundreds of papers that are cutting edge. By nature of this class, I'm trying to narrow focus, to build, so to say, from the ground up. I've chosen a paper that is super useful for thinking about this, because it's a very straightforward extension to the standard New Keynesian model. So this one, as you have heard, is a three-equation model. Right? This is a model that has essentially three equations. There is a dynamic demand equation, there's a dynamic supply equation, and then there's a central bank reaction function. That's what this model is all about. And the beauty of this paper by Saruk, Smets, and Fernandel is it adds one more equation to this at the end of the day. So we're going to have one extra equation. And so that's going to be allowing us to think about this topic in a very, very transparent and clear and academically rigorous way. Okay? It's going to allow, of course you can write this model in a more complicated way, but at the end of the day there is like one extra equation, and it's going to allow us to think about this in a completely different way than in the standard model. And so this is written by Saruk and Frank Smets. Smets is one of the giants in monetary economics in central banking, and Gauthier Fernandel from the Paris School of Economics. So that's the first topic. The second topic is that I've decided or brought to you here in terms of this class or course is thinking about an extension of the standard New Keynesian model in terms of what we call monetary fiscal interactions. So when you think about what we're going to do here is we're going to examine how government deficits and government debt affect inflation in the economy. So this is this goes back to a very long literature that has studied that, well, if the government spends more than it takes on in revenues, how much inflation does that create? And what we see in the data is sometimes it creates very little inflation, sometimes it creates a lot of inflation. And we're going to use this this framework to think about, okay, why does sometimes government deficits create a lot of inflation, and sometimes the same government deficit doesn't create any inflation? How? I mean, right? As a future macroeconomist, when you're going to take whatever job you're taking, and your boss walks into your office and says, "All right, the Vietnamese government has just decided to increase the government deficit. How much extra inflation are we going to get out of this? You know, you need to be able to understand, well, there are circumstances when you're not going to get any additional inflation, when inflation is not going to move at all. Or you have to tell your boss, well, given the current circumstances and the proposal of increases in the deficit, we may expect inflation to go up significantly. So and that's what we call monetary fiscal interactions, because ultimately it depends on how the fiscal authority interacts with the monetary authority. So how the treasury interacts with the central bank. And interaction here doesn't mean like they're picking up the phone. No, that's not what we mean by that. It actually means that, you know, how does the central bank carry out its policy, and is it fighting the fiscal expansion or is it not fighting the fiscal expansion? So when the central bank decides about, say, the interest rate, how does that interest rate decision, does that take into account or not what the government is doing in terms of taxes? So we're going to look into this. It's again a two-way interaction, this time between the central bank and the fiscal authority. And we're going to do a very famous paper here. It's a paper by Bianchi, Faccini, and Melosi, published in the Quarterly Journal of Economics now 2.5 years ago. And it's exactly trying to think about this setting. It's called regimes, that there is a monetary policy and a fiscal policy that's either active or passive. What exactly the word active or passive means, we're going to learn in these papers. So the idea is that there's another branch in monetary economics that, you know, is getting a lot of attention, and you just think about what happened in the last, say, year in the United States in terms of the run-up in government debt, or the last, not just last 1 year, the last 5 years. Many countries have, seen this very huge increase in government debt, and people are now worried. What does this do to the macroeconomy? All right, so that's what those are going to be the two topics, and roughly, toughly, we're going to talk for 1 week about this, and then we're going to talk for the second week about this. That's the big idea in terms of the class. Okay, any questions so far?
So do we have any assignment?
We'll talk about assignment. Can you bring that question back to me, please? About assignments and stuff, and grading and blah blah blah. We'll talk about that. Once we go to the once we go further on these slides. Yeah. Okay. More questions? Other questions in terms of these topics or anything that may be unclear? What's that? Oh, good? Okay. So, then let's talk a little more about the course materials. Dean, you came in a little late. The big resource for all of the material in this class is this Moodle website. Do you have access to this Moodle website? Okay, good. So, as I said earlier, there is all the material here. Today we are talking about the schedule, the module description, and right now we are into Lego 1. I also posted the papers for you, and so we'll talk more about the assignment and so forth, but this is the macroclimate paper, and then this is the monetary fiscal interaction paper. And then there's also an appendix to this paper that I also posted here. Okay. So there's also computer codes. We're going to be working with computer codes. There's a computer code that I posted, and we will have more. I will post, bless you. I will post more computer codes. So there's a file called nk.mod. We will be working with this, but then we will extend this, and there will of course be other computer codes that we'll be posting here, for the macroclimate as well as for the monetary interaction class. Okay. So we're going to have lectures. We're also going to have in-class exercises, hands-on computer sessions, but there will also be 2 sessions that are going to be self-study sessions. So let me talk about those. And maybe for that, it will be useful to go to the schedule, document. Okay, so we have this schedule here. Let's open that and let's look at that together. And let's discuss this. So here's the schedule for this class. And then first and foremost, we have scheduled 10 days. So we'll start today, we go through Friday, and there's a weekend, and then there's another week, Monday through Friday. And then that's the end of the class. Now, help me a little bit about the structure here at BGU. Is this the last week of like by the 13th? Is this the end of the semester essentially for you folks? I somewhere read it's like March 15 is the end of the fall or semester. Is that true? Or winter semester? Is this like your last class in this semester?
This is the last class.
It's the last class. And so once this class is over, then there's no more classes for you. And then when do you guys restart? You starting like in the next semester? When is that going to start?
We will write thesis at the beginning, around at the beginning of April.
Perfect. Excellent. So you all are in which year are you now? You're in the second year. So it's your third semester now.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you are in master students, it's your third semester, and when you have finished this class, you have your thesis to write, and then you're going to graduate from UG. Well, that sounds great. Fantastic. Okay. Now, right, so we're gonna always meet in the morning, and now the first important question is, I was told we're gonna start from 9 to 12, right? But apparently there's also other classes that start at 9:15. Now you guys tell me, for me it doesn't matter whether we start at 9 or we start at 9:15, I'm completely indifferent. You guys tell me, what do you prefer? Do you prefer to start at 9 a.m. sharp, or do you prefer to start at 9:15? So let's do a little voting here.
Yeah.
Okay. So who wants to start at 9:15? Who wants to start at 9?
So hunger.
Alexa, you don't care? Okay. So there's also in difference. So 9:15 is better for you folks? Okay, so we start at 9:15. Yeah? So we're gonna start at 9:15. Of course that comes with extending it beyond 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock, I should have said that of course. But it's gonna be something like 12:15 then. Okay. Something like that. We're gonna have a break. So I was told that we go for 90 minutes and then have a 15-minute break and then go for the remaining time. Is that usual here? Or do you have a longer break? Or tell me a little bit. It's the first time I'm here, as you of course may have figured. But is this like the standard setting, 90 minutes, 15-minute over break, and then we go for another 90 minutes? Yeah?
If you feel like you never want break, anytime you can ask us because
In
we
between?
look at our face and we
Okay.
know that
Yeah, I
your
see.
face already.
Okay.
So you can ask us.
Now my job, of course, is to make sure that you guys are not falling asleep. I will be working hard on this, but of course I have enough experience that when I see students starting to fade away, then we'll have a little bit of a break, of course. Okay, so that's it. Then we'll do the 9:15, and then the same is true for next week, of course. So this will be 9:15, going until 12:15. Okay. Now, in terms of the topics or like the setup here, since all of you have heard about the New Keynesian model except for Alexa, so we have to manage a little bit that. But today the idea is to set everybody on an equal footing when it comes to the basic New Keynesian model. Okay, so today until noon today, I will be going through, and it will be a little faster. But I will be going through material that summarizes this basic New Keynesian model. So let me ask you, who did you had as a teacher that covered this model? When was this taught to you? So you're now in your third semester. At what semester have you been introduced to the New Keynesian model?
Actually, first semester.
The first semester?
First week, Professor Rayos.
Yes.
And after that, went through it again with Professor Binder.
Binder?
Then Professor Alex.
And Alex Mann-Meyer-Gode. Okay, so you got it like 3 times. Okay, that's basically right. So it's Professor Binder, Professor Meyer-Gode, and Professor Haliassos. They are all introduced to the New Keynesian model. That's fantastic. And that was the first semester, and the second and third semester.
No, the first one is just purely theory and derivation. The second and the third one is more on like the coding part.
Okay, that's perfect. Alexa, may I ask you, so you haven't been in those classes? I'm just trying to.
Okay, sorry. I'm a staff here and I'm here to, my supervisor wanted
Oh, I see.
and some other class of champion, the last champion from the classes that
I see. Good. So then, but what's good, Alexa, is that today you need to work a little harder than everybody else. Let's put it this way. Okay, that's the basic idea. But we will make sure that you will be able to follow, of course. So what's the idea? Because once we understand this or have an equal footing, then that will be very easy then to branch into the macro climate New Keynesian model extension as well as to the one-to physical interaction. Good. So then there is an afternoon, there's 2 things in the afternoon, always on Mondays. Okay? Now, that's where, this is going to be a little special. Those sessions are self-study sessions. So there will not be a lecture. I will not be standing here. This will be a self-study session. Okay? So this one is self-study, and I'm going to give you the assignment, what you have to self-study. So there's a self-study here, and then next Monday afternoon, there's also a self-study. Okay. What do I mean by self-study? Well, the assignment is for you in this afternoon, we're going to go through a set of slides here, and we're going to be relatively fast. I'm not going to race through, but I'm going to, skip details here and there. And I'm going to tell you, take this afternoon as a self-study. Okay. So the idea is, you're going to go through the slide deck, and anything that's unfamiliar, you're going to study, and you're trying to understand, so to say, the step-by-step derivations. Like, for instance, I have slides that do step-by-step derivations. It would take us half an hour. You told me that you did this with Alexander Meyer-Gode and Haliassos, and the idea is that you understand this. Second is the macro climate model, and the self-study here, and this is where you should use the most of your time today afternoon, is to read the Sahuk, Smets, and Fernandel paper. That's the assignment. So you have to read, just write that down, read the Sahuk, Smets, and Fernandel paper. So the emphasis here is on reading. I want you to read this paper from the first page to the last page this afternoon. And there will be questions, there will be things you don't understand, and that's perfectly fine. The classes are designed, starting tomorrow, to go through this paper step by step. But I want you to have read the paper at least once and make annotations. When you read something like that, no clue what this means, make an annotation on your paper. But the idea is you need to have at least read the paper once to get what's the big picture of this. So that's the self-study. So take maybe an hour on the New Keynesian review, but take about 2 hours on reading that paper. And then likewise, next Monday, the idea is that you're going to read it's another self-study, you're going to read the paper by Bianchi, Faccini, and Melosi. So you're going to read, Bianchi, Melosi, and Ficini. Paper. Okay? So that's the idea. How does that sound to you guys?
Yeah, clear.
Huh?
Clear.
Me? Yeah? Okay. Good. Excellent. Alrighty, good. So again, you know where to find these papers, right? They're all on Moodle.
Okay.
And again, you don't need to, so if you again, the emphasis on reading. I mean, we are here, by Friday, my plan is that, at the latest on Monday, but we'll see whether ideally we should be getting this done by Friday, but, if we need one more lecture on Monday morning, we'll see that we understand this macroeconomic law. And by Friday, the idea is to understand really what is this monetary fiscal stuff. Great. Other questions? Now, Juan, you said something about the coding. Min, you did that too, right? So with Alexander Meyer-Gode and with Michael Binder, you did actually some coding. With Michael, Lin, I'm sorry. With Michael, you did MATLAB coding? What's this MATLAB? And Danier as well? No! Oh, this is fantastic! Because that saves me a lot of time. I mean, I came here with the prior. I have to invest a lot of time in bringing up to speed on MATLAB and Danier, which is great that you know Danier and MATLAB. So the idea is everyone starting not tomorrow but on Wednesday. By Wednesday, we will be having in-class MATLAB exercises and Danier exercises. So on your laptops, please bring MATLAB and Danier installation. Okay, so ready to use. So you have a campus license for MATLAB and Danier? How do you get access to MATLAB and Danier when you did this with Michael?
We used the free version for 1 month.
Oh, I see. Do you still have access to that? I see.
We use different email than we have.
Oh, I see. So, yeah, could you get this done? Could you get it? I mean, that sounds okay. So when I see you got the 30-day free MATLAB version to test. And when did you do that class? When was that?
1
Few
year.
months back, but then, yeah, so I think now if we want to register, we need to use
A different email address? Is this legally okay here in Vietnam to do, or do you get in trouble doing that? That's fine. Yeah?
We can make it work.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Okay. Alexa, do you know MATLAB and Danier? Have you? My suggestion is, Alexa, that you team up with someone from this class. I don't know, Ivy. Can you team up with Ivy, for instance? Work a little together. I don't like the idea that you've never done anything like the MATLAB and Danier. Could you join forces perhaps? That would be great. So then, folks, then for the self-study of this afternoon, there is another element that you should invest a little bit of time, namely install MATLAB and Danier. Okay? So go back here and also install MATLAB and Danier. So make sure you are, getting to the. I'm gonna ask you tomorrow. I hope I don't forget about this. I'm gonna ask you where things stand with your MATLAB and Danier. But the whole idea is that we will be hopefully in a position by Wednesday, Thursday at the very latest, to work with MATLAB and Danier, to work with computer codes. Okay? That's the idea. Yeah. Good. So let's try that. All right. Good. Min, you asked about assignments, and I think you meant a little broader than the reading assignment for the self-study. Your question was more like also related to what is the grading going to be, comprised of basically. That's of course. I take it that was then you're nodding, so that must have been the question. Okay. So the grading in this class is done entirely by the exam. So there will not be any assignments I'm gonna give out. So there's not gonna be like a weekly assignment or some take-home homework that you have to bring in the next week or so. So this is there's going to be a 90 minutes exam, and the exam date already has been set. I believe it's on the 29th. No, let me
27.
The 27th of March, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's going to be on March 27th. March 27th. There's going to be a 90-minute exam. This is going to be a closed book exam. Okay? So it's going to be closed book. It's going to be in English. You can bring a dictionary and you can bring like a pocket calculator. Whether you're going to need it, I don't know yet. I haven't written the exam. Maybe later this week or sometime next week, I'm going to post a mock exam onto Moodle. So there's going to be a mock exam on Moodle. By next week, say. So I'm going to post that. So you're going to. By the way, can you read my handwriting?
Yeah.
Mock exam on Moodle by next week. I'm going to try harder to make my handwriting more legible. I mean, okay. But so I'm going to it's not yet on Moodle. Don't search on it for Moodle. On Moodle, I'm going to post this on Moodle, and then I will tell you. Okay. Any questions regarding the exam or assignments or anything else? In your other courses, do you have other types of grading arrangements, like homeworks that are graded, or so how this is done in other courses?
Some yes, but then mostly just closed book exam.
Closed book exam,
Mostly.
that's mostly, and also not 90 minutes. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all very standard. Okay, great.
We usually have some kind of homework that we have to revise Japan,
Got it. Okay. So that's one thing I may ask you. Now, once we go through slides, I'm going to tell you perhaps, look here, there's a little homework, do this derivation yourself, for instance. We may also have a little bit of, let's see how much progress we can make during the week. I may give you an explicit homework sheet, like a problem set, but how much you're going to do that, I'll decide on the progress you'll be able to make. Okay.
Sorry.
Other one, yes.
Because this is the first time we take this course in VGU, so we don't have any further document for reference for the exam beside your mock exam.
Yeah.
So may I ask about which type of the question, like derive the formulas, or the intuition, or another topic in the papers?
So, that's an important question, of course, and I totally understand also the motivation of why you're asking this question. And the mock exam is designed to give you an idea about the type of the structure of the final exam.
Okay.
Okay? I mean, I could post this right away. I have the mock exam on my computer. I decided to not do this, to maybe not confuse you before our very first meeting. Okay? I mean, the reason why I did not post this on Moodle yet is, if I post this mock exam, you may get confused. And so I wanted to first meet you here in person, explain what this course is all about, give you an idea about what the style of this course is going to be, and then I'm going to post the mock exam. And and then we're going to go through the mock exam together. I'm also going to give you the solutions to the mock exam. Okay, so you're going to get two PDF files. There's going to be a mock exam PDF file, and there's going to be a solutions mock exam PDF file, where you get an idea of what type of answers do I expect. And so that's the idea. And so maybe I should maybe advance this not posting this by this week, but you know, I'm gonna try this to do this week. You know, not next week. You know, so by this week. The idea is that that there will be questions like true/false questions. So I'm going to give you a statement, and then you're supposed to assign, yes, that's a true statement, that's a false statement,
Yeah.
and you have to give an answer, or you have to substantiate your statement, true or false, with a couple of sentences. Then there's going to be there's going to be applications. So I'm going to, from the material that we're covering, I'm going to draw from that material, and I'm going to ask you to make sense of this material. What does this mean, or where does this come from, and what model framework could you use to try to answer a question like, is inflation going to go up or inflation going to go down with environmental policies we've adopted, or climate change intensifying, and so forth.
Yeah.
So these are types of questions of understanding. And then there's going to be also possibly some small derivations that I'm going to ask you. But importantly, anything they're going to ask you to do in the exam, you will have done, or we will have done here in class together. So the material that we are covering, the derivations we're going to go through. Of course, in the exam, I'm not going to ask you to do exactly the same derivations, but in terms of style, in terms of complexity, everything we do in here in class will be reflected in the exam in terms of, are you able to understand and transfer the knowledge to a problem that is similar but not identical to what we do in class. Okay, so that's the idea. Yeah? Great. Other questions? Anything that you guys are wondering about? Nothing? Now, this is great. I mean, I was hoping that we would have as much interactions as we already had. This is great. So, students are talking about what they are expecting, what their background is. But I want to make this a little more, I want to get a little more information from you, beyond your names. So, I think we're going to have like a brief tour de table now, where I want introduction, it can be very short, because I have, you have the name tags, but if you want, you're all in the third semester, it seems like a very homogeneous group, but take maybe 20 seconds to go through the first bullet, introduce yourself to the study program. If you have any fun personal information you want to pass on, that typically sticks on in people's minds, for longer. And then if you could, maybe you don't need to answer all these bullet questions, but if you maybe would select one that applies to you maybe the most. So what is your expectations in your course? And then we already did this. This is great, right? I know that you have been taking classes with Alexander Meyer-Rode, with Professor Binder, with Professor Haliassos. But if you want to maybe just briefly touch up on this, that would be great. I think last time we started from here with Kwan. Why don't we start now from here with Hui, and then we go this way. You want to start?
So my name is Hui. I'm 28 years old. I have a background of computer science, and I realized that I'm not really like coding or software development that much. I know that you have just opened a new master program, and I actually thought that this course would be about how to learn to be a very successful trader. A part of that, until I have learned a lot about macroeconomics and econometrics. I love math as well.
Good.
So I think it's kind of great when we can have another lens to look at the world. And I'm currently also a private tutor on English and math. So I think that's helped me a lot, because even when I don't have the economic and macroeconomic background, so I can still understand economics through the lens of math.
That's very cool.
So I already have planned for my thesis. It's about survey data.
What's that? Sorry?
Survey data, macroeconomics, survey data, something like that, because we just learned that from the previous course.
Excellent.
Yeah, but I really enjoy things about DSG, something like that, because it's really cool. We're trying to, encapsulate the whole world into only a few equations, and to explain a lot of things that interact with each other at the same time. So I think it's really great. This is great. So I plan to be a lecturer in the future, but I know that that will require me to pursue a PhD. So I think that I need to plan for that as well. I want to do that in Germany because I think that Vietnam is not like had a lot of experience in research. We don't have that tradition, but in Germany, for example, like we have hundreds of years of that already.
That's right.
So I want to be there. And I'm also waiting for the result from the EAD scholarship for the next semester of his PhD.
So let me ask you, so you all are in the program, and of course at Goethe I have a lot of students of, not a lot, but I have students from VGU, coming. Are you all planning to spend the semester in Frankfurt, or how does this work in terms of your study plan?
There are 5 PhD scholarships. And,
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and we are waiting for the result. So
Oh, I see. So you're all applying, and then there's 5 scholarships that are given.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Good. I see. Okay. I didn't know that about that part. I mean, it's very useful, very helpful for me to understand the details of the setup and the arrangements. But then typically, when you're going, you will be going like to write, doing your thesis semester,
Yeah.
and that will be the idea. You're going to Frankfurt, in the 4th semester.
Yeah.
Are you also taking then courses in Frankfurt, or?
We have no courses.
Okay, then there's no courses then left. Very useful. Fantastic, Yui. Thank you so much, Yui. Let's proceed with the two.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Luan. I'm studying BA at Bachelor's. Not pharmacy.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm studying BA.
Business administration.
Yeah. Main concentration is finance. Because I met a lot of difficulties in thesis, so I decided to train it after graduation. To further myself and my understanding about economic and also economic metrics. Yeah, and because I have studied like 3 courses around PhD, but this is the last one. And although my thesis is not about PhD, but I want to like deeply understand it and like fully comprehensive understanding about that, and also fulfill my program needs. So the reason why I really interested in this courses.
Great. Thank you very much too. Thank you. That's very good to know, and it's interesting about the background. So let's continue, and maybe we can go row by, or maybe, I don't. No, let's stick to the plan. Let's stick to the plan.
Yeah.
Let's see, Anne, of course, Anne. Please go ahead.
So my name is Ki An. I study student here also in the in business. And after I graduate, I joined the program immediately. And so I had a lot of expectation for the course because I will be doing my master thesis with Professor Alexander also on PhD and climate change topic. Yes.
Excellent.
So I'm very curious about what we got to cover, and also I hope that it can help me to have more understanding on the PhD and also the relevant to my thesis.
Okay. Fantastic. I have to ask you, Anne, when you introduced your first name, you said something about Kik. What's your middle name? Kik. Do you prefer to be approached by Kik or by Anne? Anne. Anne is your. Oh, okay, good. And then you're saying you're going to write your thesis with Alexander Meyer-Bode on climate change, macroclimate. What did Alexander teach in terms of his course here? Did he teach macroclimate change already? Monetary economics, the New Keynesian model, and some elements of financial frictions. I understand. Okay, but no macroclimate. So okay, and also no monetary fiscal interactions. Good. I was scared for a second that I was going to be a big overlap here, but because I know. Of course, great. Very good, Anne, and welcome. Juan, do you want to continue?
Yeah. My name is An, and we are here in the 3rd semester of GFE program. And what make me difference with other members, I have two young kids, and I already take about 10 years in international uh, international companies before this course, and my academic interest in is the international macroeconomics, of course, the monetary policy and the others, which can impact to the factory, the firms, and the economy. And I hope that after this course, I can build up the models by myself.
Hi. Oh, I see. Good.
Yeah, after this course, I can build the model by myself to see what happened in the system. So that's my expectation. Yeah.
Excellent. This is very interesting one, and welcome. Great to have you, and you know, especially for sharing your background and your interests. And and you're going to be writing your thesis as well soon.
Yeah, I also write a thesis with Professor Michael Binder, and also use a DSG model. And I hope that after this course, I will have another idea to build up my model. So thank you.
Well, we'll work on it.
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. Great to have you. Dean, do you want to continue?
My name is Chun. So I would like to continue students. It's easy to study. My background is I had 6-7 years in industry actually, especially in marketing field.
In what? Sorry?
Marketing.
In Montreal?
Marketing.
Marketing.
Ah, okay. And I just want to learn more, so I found out that this program maybe my career switching. That's it.
Welcome. It's like one, you have backgrounds here that is different from many of the other students, so which is of course very useful often in terms of having a group that has a little diverse background to infuse and help the others. Great. Good to have you. Ming, do you want to complete the left-hand side part of the class?
Yeah, sure. My name is Mi. I also have been working for a few years, and yeah, recently I just decided to maybe I would like to go for PhD. So joining the GFE program is just a natural path. And for this course, I also hope to further explore on different aspects of the monetary economics and also ESG model. Previously, like we did a little bit of like coding part, but mostly like the Professor Binder was giving us a template, and then we only do minor tweaks on it. We really don't know how to actually build from the ground up.
I see.
So I hope that the more I can have further insight on that during this course.
It's not in. Okay, good. That's great. So I hear your desire. Great to have you, Min, and I hear the desire, and we'll see. So building from the ground up is of course a very noble task to do. It takes a lot of time though, and it's a little repetitive, right? Once you build it up from the ground, it's like it can take a lot of time to then say, look, I want to do this from the scratch, right, from a white piece of paper. But I'll keep it in mind. So there's without promising too much, there's a possibility to take this, so to say, explicitly into account going forward. And it's interesting to think also about the PhD. I mean, we also indicated that he wants to continue, and so this is great to have and good to know. Thank you very much. Let's move over here and let's continue. Alexa, do you want to go ahead?
My name is Alexa, and I started looking at vision use since August last year as a research and teaching assistant in university. And when I started, I realized that I didn't have a background in econometrics or economics. That's why I'm taking some GFE courses to do coursework.
Okay, I see, perfect. And in what field are you doing research and teaching assistance? In finance, that was exactly. And because finance is a big field, but say in finance, what type of I mean, it's very general finance, like macroeconomics, right? Or can you detail a little bit what are the exact details you're
We
looking
are
at?
doing, like, for teaching, we're teaching investment finance, corporate finance, but
I see.
in research, I'm doing a project about credit cards.
Okay.
Yes, so it's very related to my credit
Great. Great to have you. Welcome, Alexa. Fantastic. Let's continue. Ivy, please. Mm.
I was in last semester, which means I finished my impact and I did my business in June last semester.
Ah,
But we didn't have this course last year, so I want to go to do some new knowledge.
I see. So you already graduated, you already finished.
Already finished but not graduated.
Oh, that's good. So what does this mean then? So you have finished your master thesis, you have finished all the courses, and there's going to be a graduation ceremony when you're going to get your degree, and then you're looking forward to that. And this is just for fun for you? For now, I mean that's what fun is, no? Extending knowledge is fun, no? Great, Ivy. Great to have you. And you've been to Frankfurt last semester. Did we see each other there? I don't think so. Was this in the summer last year or in the fall?
Summer,
In the summer.
then
May to October. Okay. Good. Great to have you, Ivy, and I hope you're gonna have fun. Lynn. Nguyen. That's right, right? It's and the G is silent, no? I mean, it's like Nguyen, right? That's how you pronounce it, or Nguyen? It's very hard for us. I see. Yeah, that's right. I see. Okay. For PhD students, yeah. For second year, actually, PhD students. Yeah.
And my idea for my usually is intership between macroeconomic and the household. I mean, because Asian is not hormone now, they have a different background.
That's right.
Yeah, so
They're
that's
just
why
genius,
I
right?
care about diversity Asian also. Yeah. So
Very cool.
so
That's very exciting, then, and I can only encourage you. I mean, Min's had this, and Rui is thinking about this, like furthering your education. Alexa, and I mean, it's so many. Education is really, you know, Benjamin Franklin once said, right, that investment in education is, you know, pays the biggest return. And so I think that's something to keep in mind. That investing in your human capital is exactly the right thing to do. And one, you're nodding, so right. I mean, this is like really good. I mean, it's like, and it pays a high yield. So Lin, welcome and great to have you. Last but not least, Juan.
Hi teacher, my name is Guam, and previously I was also a VTU student of Finance and Accounting of ITEC 2020. I graduated 2 years ago in 2024. And like the other people, I'm in the final semester of GFA. And the reason I take your course because it helped me get credits.
Okay.
Everything
has a reason.
Just be honest.
Yeah, sure.
And my expectation from this course is to strengthen my analytical skills, to broaden my knowledge about macroeconomic theories and its applications to different problems in life, like climate change and the interactions between monetary and fiscal policy, like you mentioned, and about the content of this course that I already knew is about the new Keynesian model and some macroeconomic foundations. And about my path after this master program, maybe I will work as a financial analyst for about 3 to 4 years because after 6 years VTU, I feel so exhausted. So let's be honest about that. Nothing too hard.
Studying can be hard, absolutely. You know, studying is intense and hard, for sure. And but again, you know, it's opening doors, and that's how I have to think about this. No, it opens doors that would be closed otherwise. Great one, fantastic, great to have you, and I hope you're gonna have fun collecting the credits. Okay. Great, everyone. Let's dive into the topics then, and let's right. So we discussed the schedule. Oh yeah, one document we haven't actually opened yet, but I think that's really not necessary any longer. Is this module description document, right? So on Moodle there is like document number 2. That's the document description, and it's this one here, the module description. But I think we have discussed everything now in that. So let me really quickly make sure we're not forgetting anything. Yeah, you're gonna get 60 PCTS for it. Yeah, the learning outcomes, the course description. Oh yeah, the one thing I wonder maybe, so in terms of literature, the slides have lots of stuff on it, and I'm going to point to this and that and that. But say, Alexa, for you, for instance, so if you want to read on the New Keynesian model, you know, this is a textbook by Jordi Galli, and there is a chapter number 3 that details the New Keynesian model. All of you guys, I take it, have read this already with you know, the 3 courses where you were introduced. But this is essentially the key resource for the New Keynesian model. And then here are the you know, 2 papers. This is the QJE paper on monetary fiscal. This is the Smets-Walber's the Smets-Mandel paper, and I posted that on Moodle. Yeah, I think that's it. Perfect. Okay. So then, without further ado, let's go into the first substantial slide deck, which is going to be lecture 02 NK1. It's going to be 2 NK, you know, there's this NK1 and there's NK2. We're going to cover this one next. Good. So what is this then? So this is the so-called the New Keynesian model, and I'm going to be relatively quick on those slides without racing. Given that we know already this framework, I can be more quicker. So we're going to slow down. You know, when we go to the macro, climate, monetary, fiscal, we're going to be slower then. But now I'm going to take a lot of things as given. Okay, so what is this New Keynesian model all about? Well, this New Keynesian model is basically a real business cycle model that you learned from Michalis Haliassos, coupled with nominal rigidities. So you take a real business cycle model and you add sticky prices or sticky wages to it, and then you're gonna get what's called the New Keynesian model. So, going back, when you studied the so-called real business cycle model, that was a model where only technology shocks hit the economy, right? There was technology shocks were the drivers of the economy. Importantly, all nominal prices and wages were completely flexible. So at each point in time, prices were fluctuating and changing. And that setup, basically implies that there's no role for monetary policy. Central bank, when it changes the interest rate, it changes maybe inflation, but it doesn't have any impact on economic activity. Or, so that's basically the whole idea. And then, starting a little while ago, people asked, okay, what happens if you relax one assumption, namely prices are completely flexible, you make prices sticky, or wages sticky. And then, the resulting model, this plus sticky prices or sticky wages, gives you the so-called New Keynesian model. It's a synthesis, if you like, between the RBC model and nominal price regime. And it does one thing. All of a sudden, monetary policy becomes very powerful. And I've met Jordi Galí, who's one of the intellectual giants in this field. I met him many times, and Jordi Galí, in conversations, always keeps telling that monetary policy can do everything in the New Keynesian model. So it's super powerful. Right? But in the RBC model, monetary policy has no role, no power. In the NK model, it's like the superpower there. It's like, depending what the central bank does, it can change everything in terms of allocations to anything happening in this economy. All right. So there is this textbook by Walsh that has a great exposition, and then there is this Jordi Galí paper, textbook. If you want to read up on this, those would be two resources I can really recommend. There is more. There is a classic paper by Khalida Ghali and Girdler, and then there is the Bible of the New Keynesianism. It's by Woodford. I have written on this as well. Go to my website if you like, if you're interested. There's a paper that's called On DSGE Models that you may find useful, that goes back, through, some of the things I'm talking about here. All right. So, why does the New Keynesian model exist in the first place? It's a cool model. It's lots of math. You all know it. You all went through it. But why do we have that model in the first place? What led people to develop it? Well, again, macroeconomics is about first studying the data, and then second, building a model to explain the data. Okay? So let's go back and study what are the empirical facts that have led people to develop the New Keynesian model. And so this is what this slide is. This is empirical evidence, or AKA the data. Right? That's so to say thinking about, AKA the data. And I'm drawing here, and there's hundreds of papers. I'm drawing on a paper by Cristiano Eichenbaum and Evans. Okay? It's a vector autoregression. So who has heard about a vector autoregression? You all have heard about a vector autoregression? It's a regression in a multivariate sense, right? It's a multivariate OLS, ordinary least square regression. And so these three authors, they looked at what happens in the data if the central bank unexpectedly cuts the normal interest rate. So if Christine Lagarde gives a press conference and says, the executive board of the ECB has decided to cut the nominal policy rate. Okay, so that's what they do, and so the authors identify in the data the effects on the policy, on the economy, when the central bank unexpectedly cuts the rate. Okay, so say R, the nominal rate, falls unexpectedly. And that's what you get in terms of results. Okay, so you get in terms of results that the interest rate, and now we have to be careful, the lines with pluses here are the VER mean. So these are the mean responses in the data. When there is an unexpected cut in the interest rate. So this is R, and the idea is that we're going to drop. We're going to go from there to there. That's the shock. This is the unexpected cut in normal interest rate. And then thereafter, the interest rate normalizes, goes back to where it was, but this gray area here is what the crosses, is the mean response in the data. That's what that is. And what we see from it is that when the central bank cuts the interest rate, when we're going to look at output, we're going to see that output expands. So in response to the cut in the normal interest rate, you're going to see that economic activity goes up. That's an effect that we want to think about capturing in our model. So output, say Y, goes up. If R goes down, output goes up. First important fact. And it turned out, when you take an RBC model, a real business cycle model, and you put in a central bank into an RBC model that cuts the normal interest rate, you're going to find the RBC response is going to be flatlined. So when you're going to think about putting in an RBC model, you're going to get a zero response. So this is the RBC model. So an RBC model would say, yeah, when the central bank cuts the interest rate, the inflation goes up, but the normal interest rate later on goes up by the same amount, so there's no change in real activity, and output doesn't change. In the data, right, these crosses, you're going to see though that in the data output does go up. And that has led people to develop the New Keynesian model. And now comes, of course, the million-dollar question: what does the New Keynesian model look like? And that's what this solid line is. This is the New Keynesian model, and this is what this is. And you see, the New Keynesian model produces an increase, or can, produce an increase similar to the one observed in the data. Okay? So maybe write this. So this one is the New Keynesian model, NK model. So you see the same, for the cut in the policy rate, you're going to see that output goes up, and it goes up by a similar amount than in the data. That's the whole idea. So people have developed this model so as to have a model that can give rise to that when the central bank cuts the rate, you're going to see heightened economic activity. As a byproduct to all of this, you're also going to see, even though it's that inflation goes up. Okay? So in the data, the inflation goes up. It's not statistically super significant, at least early on. But starting in these are quarters here. Starting in quarters 6, 7, 8, the effect becomes significant statistically. So there is a significant also, economically and statistically significant rise in the rate of inflation. So inflation, or maybe we abbreviate that with pi, okay? Pi goes up as well. So the central bank cutting the policy rate leads to more inflation, more output, in response to that. The effect is delayed. You see that the peak, the central bank cuts this rate today, and you see the peak inflation response occurs after about 2 to 3 years, right? So this is quarters. This is quarters, and you see that the peak effects are delayed often. And so what does this go back to? This goes back to Milton Friedman, right? Milton Friedman in the 1950s already made that point in an argument that when the central bank changes the policy rate, it's a little bit like a bathtub effect. When you are looking at a bathtub and you open the water faucet, right? The water starts flowing into the bath, but it takes some time until the bathtub is filled with water. It's the same idea with how monetary policy affects the economy. When the central bank changes the interest rate today, it takes some time until the interest rate change has fed through the economy and you're actually going to see changes in the economy. And that's exactly what these delayed peaks are, right? So here it can take up to 3 years for the peak effect on inflation to materialize, or on output, 2 years until the peak effect on output occurs. All right. Any questions? Go ahead, Min.
Okay, sorry, Professor. I understand that, usually for the output and consumption, you have this kind of how shape, right? But then for inflation, I don't understand why initially we have the kind of downward pressure.
Oh, that's perfect, Min. Great question, right? So Min is asking about this effect here, right? Initially it goes down, or even in the data and even in this model, and what could be the reason for that? Well, in the literature, there's different ways on how to think about this. One is, it's what's called, price puzzle, that inflation first goes down before it goes up. And one reason is that, think about firms and households. And when firms and households have, have mortgages or have credit, they take out. Well, they have to pay a rate of interest on that, on those mortgages and those credits, right? I mean, if you have a loan from the bank, you're paying interest rate on the loan from the bank. Now, when the bank cuts the policy rate, the interest rate, some of the interest rates in the economy are also going to be cut. So the lending rate is going to be smaller. So when the loan or lending rate falls, then your loan gets cheaper. If you are a firm and you need to take out a loan to pay your workers, then if the interest rate is lower, your loan rate is going to be lower. So it's going to be cheaper for you. Your costs are going to be smaller. So in other words, long story short, one way to think about this is that when the central bank cuts the interest rate and banks pass this on to firms and households, lending rates are going to fall. And when lending rates are going to fall, firms' marginal costs are going to fall. So firms' costs are being smaller, means some firms are going to pass on those lower costs onto their customers' prices. And that's when inflation can fall initially. But then subsequently, firms and households are going to have more demand. The demand effect is going to take over time. So that lending rate effect is going to be important in the short run, but in the medium run, or like after 2 years, it's going to be the demand effect. The higher demand, people are going to start building more houses. They're going to buy more cars. Then that demand effect is going to dominate it going forward. That's one way to think about it. Does this help you? Yeah, perfect. Okay. Good. Any other questions? So what's the basic bottom line? Well, the bottom line is in the data, monetary policy has real effects. And that led the profession develop that New Keynesian model. That's basically the whole idea. And what we're going to do is, we're going to work with this so-called canonical New Keynesian model, where we're going to see qualitatively those results from the model. We're going to see qualitatively when the central bank cuts the policy rate, we're going to see more economic activity, more inflation. What we're not going to do here in class is we're not going to work and develop a so-called quantitative New Keynesian model. Okay? What do I mean with that? Well, for that we have papers like Cristiano Eichenbaum and Evans, Smeltz and Wouters, and then that model is not just 3 equations, it's like 10 equations or 15 equations. It has a lot of stuff in it. This is nothing else than just these solid lines here. This is the quantitative New Keynesian model. Right? That Smeltz and Wouters and Cristiano Eichenbaum, Evans have developed. We're going to be working qualitatively. So our model is not going to have these delays, for instance. Those delays you're going to get when you are putting in, like, for instance, capital and financial frictions and sticky wages and habit persistence and a lot of extra elements that give you that delay. But at the core, these models have sticky prices, nominal rigidities. That's really what you need, is to get the real effects going. Okay. Any questions on the data? Right, so remember, right, so this is like in monetary macro, right, this is step number 1. Step number 1, look at the data, look at the empirical evidence, and then I told you what do macroeconomists do. What is the second step they do? They develop a model to explain it. Okay, so let's look at what is this model going to look like. So this is step number 2. So this is the model. And at the end of the day, you derive this, you all know this, the New Keynesian model can be written in terms of 3 equations. That's what you have studied already. So there is a so-called Phillips curve. It's a dynamic supply curve, some people say. Then there is a new investment and savings curve, or what some people call the new dynamic demand equation. And then there is the table. And in terms of notation, and I'm going to use most of the time in this course the same notation. There's going to be inflation, the Phillips curve relates inflation to expected future inflation. So ET is the condition expectations operator. Pi t plus 1 is QT plus 1 inflation. The head is the head variable means it's in log deviations. So head, for instance, pi t head is the logarithm of the rate of inflation over the steady state inflation rate. Now this is not legible, sorry, just careful. So every head variable means you take the natural logarithm and of the variable, say inflation, and you divide this by the steady state rate of inflation. Okay, that's how the head variable is defined. These are in log deviations, in percentage deviations. Okay, so the Phillips curve relates inflation to future expected inflation and the output gap. XT is the output gap. It's the difference between actual output and potential output. The UAS curve comes from the consumer-Euler equation, right? It's like when you write down the household problem, it comes from the household problem. So this is the output gap today is a function of the future expected output gap minus a parameter, and then we have something very important here in brackets. What is this? This is the nominal interest rate minus expected inflation. Very good, Min and Hui, exactly. This is the ex-ante real interest rate. Okay, so this is the ex-ante real interest rate, and let me abbreviate that with RRT head. This is the real interest rate. And that, if you like, is one of the key elements in this entire model, which says if the real interest rate moves up or down, it's going to move relativity up or down. So the trick will be later on to understand that, well, if the central bank moves the nominal rate moving doesn't matter at all if expected inflation moves one-to-one with the nominal rate. Right? If the nominal rate moves one-to-one with expected inflation, the real rate is going to be staying constant. Suppose the central bank cuts this nominal rate. If at the same time expected inflation goes down by the same amount, the real rate stays unchanged, no change in economic activity. So the holy grail basically is that when the central bank changes the nominal rate, if expected inflation is sticky, doesn't move, then the real rate is changing. That's the whole idea of the new Keynesian model. Can we find the specification that when the central bank cuts the nominal rate, inflation is sticky, or inflation doesn't move a lot? Right? Because with inflation doesn't moving a lot, nominal rate falling, then the real rate can actually fall. Right? And when the real rate falls, what happens in this model when the real rate falls? What happens to output when the real rate falls? When the bracket is going to be smaller, what happens to the output gap? The output gap goes up, right? Exactly, right? Because of this minus sign. When the real rate falls, the output gap goes up. So if we are able to develop, right, an environment when the real rate falls, the output gap goes up. That's essentially coming back to this. Then we are getting close to the data. Now, you can see this from the data right now, right? You see the real rate is the difference between the nominal rate and inflation, right? This is the nominal rate falling. Inflation, it's insignificant statistic. It goes down, but it's first of all very small. Second, it's insignificant. So in other words, in the data, there's not much happening here in terms of statistical significance on inflation. So when R falls and inflation stays put, what happens to the real rate in the data? The real rate goes down, and economic activity goes up. So the whole idea of this new Keynesian model is embedded basically in the so-called real interest rate channel. The real rate falling, triggering a rise in economic activity. Now, what feature produces this thing to move little. Okay? So this one, must move little. So what feature produces expected inflation to be moving relatively little quantitatively? What feature is that in the model, in the New Keynesian model? What produces inflation to not jump by as much as the normal interest rate?
The sticky price.
Sticky prices, exactly, right? It's sticky prices. It's this price stickiness that produces exactly this feature that inflation doesn't move a lot. Right? It's exactly the key feature that this model has. When prices are sticky, so firms are not changing their prices in every period, right? So in other words, you go to your supermarket or you to a department store or wherever you're shopping, prices do change, but they change infrequently. They change slowly over time. And if that happens, the central bank in Vietnam cuts the normal interest rate, but firms don't change their prices right away. Well, that's going to lead to stickiness in prices and the real rate moving in this economy. That's the whole idea. So, moves little due to sticky prices. Due to sticky prices. That's the whole idea. So in other words, in the limit, in an extreme, right, if this thing stays constant, then a cut in the nominal rate is going to produce a cut in the real rate, leading to more economic activity. And in the RBC model, this thing moves one-to-one with this, and there's no change in the model. Excellent. Good. And then, so of course this is a DSGE model, all these equations interact with each other, right? And this, so in other words, the movement in inflation expectations must be consistent with the supply side. This is from the firm side. And then there's of course also a feedback rule where the central bank normal interest rate corresponds to inflation and the output gap. It's called there's a name for this equation. It's called the Taylor rule, going back to John Taylor from Stanford University. Now, this is what's called a monetary policy shock. Okay, so the epsilon t is the so-called monetary policy shock. Okay? So this epsilon t is a so-called monetary policy shock. So in the figure that we have reviewed on Cristiano Eichmann Evans, then this is the fall in the normal interest rate. And so suppose these things don't move, this is the sudden fall in the normal interest rate in the data that we reviewed when R suddenly falls. Okay, so that's the New Keynesian model. Any questions to the New Keynesian model? It's time to take a break now, I believe, and we're supposed to have a 15-minute break. Okay. And so let's continue after the break with this slide deck. I think we should reconvene then, what is that, 7 minutes past the hour? Does that make sense? Roughly, toughly? Roughly, toughly. Okay, let's get back 7-8 minutes after the hour, or let's say 10 past. So we're going to meet again at 11:10. Okay, so we're going to go back at 11:10 a.m. Okay, that's when we're going to continue.